Well, I thought I would tell you about when God called me to be a missionary. Even when I was a little boy before I got saved, I remember being at the Wrigley Baptist Church and I was in Vacation Bible School, and they talked about people in a village that didn't have a preacher. They talked about how the missionary said he didn't have anybody he could send, and there weren't any missionaries, and there weren't any national pastors available. And I remember thinking as a little boy, I'd be glad to go. I'd like to go tell them about Jesus. If that's possible, I'd like to do that. And then when I grew up, I went to what was called Royal Ambassador Camp, RA Camp. It was at Camp Linden in Tennessee. And as an 11-year-old boy, there was a lady there named Jean Doc. Jean Doc was a missionary to China, and her name was Dr. Jean, but they called her Jean Doc because of something in China they told us. And I used to go, and when we had free time, you could go to her porch, and I'd sit on the porch and I'd listen to her tell stories about when God used her, when she was a missionary in China, and now she was a retired lady. And the Lord burdened my heart. And that year I was with my cousin, and we were at camp, and on the last night I was very sick. I had all kind of stomach issues, and needed to go to the bathroom, couldn't go to the bathroom, and scared, intimidated. And we had gone out to a campfire following, somebody was carrying a big old wooden cross made out of tree trunks. Well, saplings, poles. And we were singing, I have decided to follow Jesus. And then we sat around, there was a big fire, and we sat around on logs around it. And all I could think about was, I wish the service would get over because I got to go to the bathroom and I'm sick and I got to go. And I wasn't the kind to ask permission to go, too timid, sat in the back and wait. And finally, we got back to the room and went to the bathroom. And I was laying on my bunk in the room, and my cousin said, "You shocked me. I expected to see you there at the altar giving your life to be a missionary." And I thought, well, I didn't even pay attention. I don't know what you're talking about. But I couldn't get away from that. And so over the next several days, the Lord just kept dealing with my heart. I went home, and I'd be hoeing the garden. I'm an 11, 12-year-old boy, and I got a hoe, and there's plants, and I got to get the weeds out. And all you city people don't know much about that, I guess, but I was out there working and trying to get the weeds out, and the Lord just kept dealing with my heart. And I said, well, I couldn't be a preacher. I could never be a preacher because I'm afraid of people. I'm scared. I'm timid. I couldn't do that. Well, I'll be a doctor. And so I began my plan to become a surgeon. And I would go to medical school and become a surgeon, and I would go as a missionary because I'd heard about that. There was a guy out of Memphis, Tennessee named Bill Wallace who was killed he was a doctor in China, and he was killed by the communists. And so I decided I wanted to be like Bill Wallace. I wanted to go to school where he went. I wanted to do everything. And so I got enrolled in the college I went to, and I signed up in pre-med. And it didn't take long for me to figure out dissecting frogs and doing all that wasn't near as much fun as teaching the Bible and going to Bible studies. And it wasn't long until I changed. So now I knew that I was going to be a missionary, but I wasn't going to be a doctor any longer. And I began preaching and teaching. Somewhere along the way, I kind of got discouraged from being a missionary because it seemed like that the preachers I followed said that if you can't cut it in America, be a missionary. And so I didn't want that to be my story. I thought, well, I can cut it. Not that bad. And so I wanted to be a pastor in America for a while. But then God really began to deal with me. Every time a missionary came to my church, boy, it just ate my lunch. Betty got where she hated seeing missionaries come because when they came, every month I wanted to be a missionary wherever they were going. If it was the Philippines this month and Russia next month and Alaska the next month, wherever it was, I wanted to be a missionary. And so the Lord really began to deal with my heart. And somewhere along the way, I realized I think I am going to be a missionary. I really think God wants me to be a missionary. So I began studying every way I could stay in English. I could go to Canada. I could go to England. I could go to Australia. And I started naming every place that spoke English. I knew I couldn't learn a language. I'd already been told in high school I didn't have the language ability, and I wasn't going to be good at it. So I tried and struggled. But, and I didn't want to raise support. I did not want to raise support, not personal support, not through churches, not through individuals. I did not want to raise support. And so it was really funny. You know, the Lord dealt with my heart. I eventually surrendered to be a missionary and to do all that God had called me to do. And, you know, he taught me the language. He put me in the right place, and he put me with the right people. And I just want you to know that you're making problems for yourself. You don't need to. Just love Jesus and enjoy what you're doing today. And tomorrow, you're going to be shocked what you'll be able to do. God has a plan for you. Enjoy that plan. Don't let something else change what you're doing. And I know that you're going to enjoy doing it. God bless you. Thanks for listening.